We think the silver supply is expected to rise by about 2.3% overall to about 1.021 billion ounces. And the main contributor is silver mine production, which is forecast to grow by about 1.8% to a 3-year high this year.
Please join us for our next live stream Sunday, September 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll go over current events, past guests, and of course, gold and silver news. Once again, our next live stream will be Sunday, September 25th, 9 p.m. Eastern. See you then. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television, SBTV. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. Michael DiRienzo, Executive Director and Secretary of the Silver Institute, joins us today. The Silver Institute is a nonprofit international association that draws its membership from across the breadth of the silver industry. Now, this includes leading silver mining houses, refiners, bullion suppliers, manufacturers of silver products, and wholesalers of silver investment products. Established in 1971, the Institute serves as the industry's voice in increasing public understanding of the many uses and values of silver. And we're delighted to have Michael join us as a first time guest. It's time to saddle up and silver up for Michael DiRienzo. Michael, welcome to SBTV. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Patrick.
Great. Glad to have you on board. Appreciate your time. I've been looking forward to speaking with you. If you could we start with a little bit about your background and how you joined the precious metals industry?
Sure. When I left college, graduated in the mid 80s, I moved to Washington, D.C. to work on Capitol Hill. And I worked for a member of Congress who was in leadership later in my tenure. But I worked on banking committee and financial services issues. I then went to work for a major automaker as a lobbyist and essentially responded to some online, basically job postings at a firm that I currently work at. And at the time, we represented the Silver Institute, the American Zinc Association, and the Gold Institute. And I sort of did their government relations and communications. And in about 2006, I became the executive director of the Silver Institute.
And I'm sure you've seen a lot. I mean, what was it like during 2011 when we saw silver shoot to the moon and then we saw such a long period where silver kind of consolidated?
Yeah, when I joined the Institute, I mean, silver was really at a low level. It was $5, $4 an ounce. The number one industrial component of silver at the time was photography. And it's interesting to see how things have changed. In 2006, the SLV ETF came onto the market. It basically followed and mirrored the GLD, which came out 2 years previous. So there's been a lot of changes. 2011, the price rise, of course, the pandemic, the silver squeeze, and so forth. So we've seen a lot of activity. I should say, in my tenure.
All right. Just a brief overview of the World Silver Survey. It's been published since 1990. What is the objective of publishing the survey?
Well, I mean, obviously, well, not obviously, but I'll show you here. Here's the original, the first World Silver Survey. This came out in 1990 and it covered 40 years. And at the time, the executive committee and the board of the directors thought it would be useful to start building a catalog of silver statistics going back to 1950. And they made a decision to continue that every year. So, quite frankly, it's really been done to primarily bring statistics and information to the market participants. So that could be miners, it could be refiners, it could be analysts, anybody that follows the silver market. So we've been doing it since 1990, and we'll continue year by year.
How representative is the World Silver Survey of the global silver market? I know you touched on you just said the miners and jewelry and things like that. So I guess it encompasses just about every corner of silver.
Yeah, it's one of the more popular, if not the most popular, publications on the market. It is widely quoted. Even today, we released this on April 20th of this year. and it's still being quoted quite extensively throughout the market. Um, Market Watch just did a piece on it. Barron's just did a piece where they referenced the numbers. And basically every day, a major and some minor publications are quoting from the survey. So it's a publication that is necessary. It's a publication that is reliable, and it's a publication that will continue.
Michael, what are some of the challenges in the compiling of the data for the survey?
Sure, that's a great question. Well, our current vendor is Metals Focus, as you know, and they have a team of some 30 analysts and consultants in 8 different countries, and they have an extensive range of contacts in other locations, which, when you combine that with available data, that provides them with a comprehensive view of the global supply of silver.
How accessible are the silver numbers for countries such as China, Russia, and India?
Well, it's been somewhat of a challenge the last couple of years in China, but the good news is that Metals Focus has people in China that work directly for Metals Focus, as they do in India. So they are regularly in contact with the silver players in those markets. And I think it's important to note that these are not just desktop analysts, okay? These folks go out across the world and meet with the mining companies. They meet with the refiners. They meet with the end users. They attend conferences. They put out weekly publications, monthly publications, and so forth. And it's not just silver. They cover the whole range of the precious metals market. So for Russia, they have no one in-house in Russia, but they have extensive contacts in the country, and they also cross-reference information with contacts in other jurisdictions.
Which countries are producing the most silver?
Well, Mexico is currently number one, China is number two, and Peru is number three. We list the top 20 producing countries in our World Silver Survey, and we also list the top 20 silver mining companies, and as well as the top producing mines as well.
Are the miners finding it a bit more challenging at times because of perhaps the government's initiatives with, let's say, green policies and things like that?
I have not heard that to be the case. I mean, I think, quite frankly, you have geopolitical issues in various regions across the world that at times can provide an issue with respect to their mining activities. And of course, you have labor issues as well. But and we had COVID, we had mandatory shutdowns, for almost a year and a half, in some cases, basically 2 years. So as that begins to subside, you're seeing these ramp up of other mining activities in countries like Mexico and Peru and others across the world, which, in our opinion, is going to lead to a stronger global silver market down the road.
We got to ask this question here. Why is the above ground silver stock no longer reported?
Well, we do have a section on above ground silver stocks on page 25 of the World Silver Survey 2022. You'll find an entire page devoted to above ground stocks. And Metals Focus has publicly discussed above ground stocks of silver. And this has largely been based on the treatment of historical mine production. So, as I mentioned earlier, their data set only began in 2010. So it makes it difficult to produce an analysis for external consumption that breaks the AGS down into its constituent parts. So we do report on it, and you can find that information in the survey itself.
Okay, I'll remember to take a better look at page 25.
Go take a look at 25. I'm gonna take a look at it right now, if you don't mind, Patrick.
Sure.
Page 25 here. We have a whole breakdown. So we talk about identifiable silver bullion stocks or inventories. So we look at the London vaults, the COMEX, the Shanghai Gold Exchange, and the Shanghai Futures Exchange. So year to year, if you look from 2020 to 2021, you're looking at about a 2% reduction in above ground stocks.
If you're enjoying this interview with Michael DiRienzo from the Silver Institute and I, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and letting the algos know you'd like to see more content like this. And if you'd like to learn more about systemic wealth protection, please do visit us at www.silverbullion.com.sg. Michael, in the survey, there is a supply and demand table, which is very popular, showing the numbers since 2013. In your opinion, what is the key takeaway for readers?
Okay, I think there are several. First and foremost, those numbers are consistently revised based on new information that comes to the attention of Metals Focus. So if you look at, for example, the 2022 survey, and if you look at mine production, there may be additional information that came to their attention in, say, 2020 with a respective country that may adjust those figures a little bit. But I think the key takeaway, and I think it's a new feature in the survey, which we've been doing, is talking about the 2022 forecast. So our survey typically goes back and it looks at the previous year with some forward thinking and a whole nother chapter on the outlook for silver for the current year. So we believe 2022 will be very strong on the demand side. Last year on the demand side, silver categories increased in every sector, including photography, by 3%. And in 2021, in 2022, we think this year's growth will be broad-based. And we expect gains from most key demand components. And we expect the global total to increase by about 11.5% to about 1.17 billion ounces. And leading this, of course, will be industrial demand. And we think it'll establish a new record high in 2022. And the reasons are there are ongoing improvements in the global economy. People are coming back to work. And that'll give silver industrial applications an additional boost. And that's going to mitigate near-term headwinds from supply chain bottlenecks and the challenges in certain regions from the COVID pandemic. We think leading the way this year again will be PV. That industry remains extraordinarily bright. You see government commitments to carbon neutrality, which have resulted in a rapid expansion of green energy projects. So we think that that sector is going to lift this year to an all-time high. Um, we think that silver supply is expected to rise by about 2.3% overall, okay, to about 1.021 billion ounces. And the main contributor is silver mine production, which is forecast to grow by about 1.8% to a 3-year high this year. And after shifting to a market deficit, which of course, as you know, is total supply less total demand, for the first time in 6 years in 2021, we do anticipate a greater shortfall this year of about 146 million ounces.
Okay, so with that shortfall, in your opinion, are we facing any shortage of silver now or perhaps in the years ahead?
I mean, right now, I think there are enough above ground stocks to meet the demand side of the equation. I think down the road, as countries continue to rely on less on fossil fuels and they attempt to shift to greener technologies, I think this poses significant challenges to not only silver, but to other components as well. When you look at base metals, when you look at rare earth metals, when you look at others, any metal that's used in industry is facing some issues going forward, and especially silver may be one of those. Um, if you look at what the World Bank has put out recently in 2021 with respect to the demands of metals for a greener environment, I think it poses some significant challenges to silver. But I also believe quite strongly that the miners are equipped to address this demand.
All right, so just to be clear, when we do see a negative number or a deficit in silver, it does not mean that there is a global shortage in silver or that miners just aren't finding any more silver.
I think, the market's pretty much balanced. You have an equal amount of supply and equal amount of demand, essentially, in our tables. But there are deficits, and there, like we mentioned in the survey, there were surpluses of silver. Some argue that the surpluses were not actually in existence, but we think that the market is moving toward a position of greater deficits going forward. And I think the miners can meet that demand down the road.
Any insights on why silver recycling is at 8-year highs?
I think it's mostly coming from the industrial side. Okay. So you're looking at the exchange in and out of EO, for example, ethylene oxide. That's primarily the number one use of, or silver is being recycled today. There's a small component of silver being extracted from electrical components such as computers and so forth. But essentially, that is like in most scrap, folks are going for the gold. I mean, really, and the silver just falls as a wayside. Price sensitivity issues with respect to jewelry and silverware, we're not seeing a lot of that on the recycling side.
Okay, and industrial demand, they're also at 8-year highs. Could you give us some insight as to why these numbers have also risen?
We pointed out in last year's World Silver Survey that PV was quite strong. We pointed out that vehicles, automotives was quite strong, and we think that's going to continue to grow. We know it's going to continue to grow. And when you take automobiles, for example, the complexity required to for not only a hybrid vehicle but an electric vehicle, and just think down the road, the autonomous driving vehicles will require much more silver in the contacts of these vehicles as they become more complex down the road. But also, when you talk about industrial demand, EO is going to continue to be strong. And the work from home economy, which is not returned, we have not returned to a everybody back in the office economy. So that required a lot of purchases of laptops, of Zoom lights, of new monitors and so forth. And that continues to this very day.
Is the silver price inelastic in that even if the price rises sharply, it will not impact the supply or the demand?
That's a great question. Some parts of the market we believe are inelastic, but equally some are characterized by short and long-term price elasticity. For example, silver loadings in PV fell quite sharply back in the day when silver started trading around $50 an ounce around 2011 or so. Obviously, silver is the best component for a PV solar panel. And even though the prices have been weaker since then, thrifting of PV loadings still continues. But manufacturers, and I just got back from a conference where this issue was discussed quite extensively. Um, while they try to put in other components, copper or others, for example, they always go back to silver. And the reason is because of its electrical conductivity, and the other issue is because it lasts longer. You don't want to be exchanging these things out every 2 or 3 years. These are built for 20-year platforms, and that's the reason why. So we think that the silver loadings in PV will definitely continue. But with respect to the question of inelastic or elasticity, um, I think there's enough. uh, Manufacturers will continue to attempt to thrift as they do with all components, all metals. But when you're looking at silver's use as a contact, when you're looking at silver's use in PV, it'll continue to thrive.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I could imagine as circuits get stronger, faster, quicker. I mean, you got to have that conductivity. You can't have one component kind of slacking off, and the other components are waiting for it to pick up pace.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Patrick.
Okay, Michael, could you explain why there are little to no primary silver mines and why silver is mined mainly as a byproduct?
Well, that's just the nature of the earth, to be quite honest with you. I mean, if you look at but also in 2021, we had over 229 million ounces of silver come from primary silver mines. and that's out of a global total of a little over 820 million ounces that year. So while primary silver mines only produce about 29 to 30% of the global mine supply in any given year, um, when you're mining for gold, when you're mining for lead zinc, when you're mining for copper, you're more than likely to find silver as well. And the miners are not going to kick any of those metals to the side of the road. They're going to take it all to the refiner in a doré bar, and they're going to get credits on all metal contained within that bar.
All right, Michael DiRienzo, before we wrap up, could you tell us a little bit more about the Silver Institute?
I'd be happy to. The Silver Institute celebrated its 50th year last year of existence. When it began, it was really uh, an informational hub for silver. So it produced papers on photography, it produced papers on coinage, it produced papers on other silver uses in industry, but it shortly changed to a market development organization. So our goals really at the Institute are to provide accurate statistics on the market to key players in the precious metals industry. And we also design programs that hopefully at the end of the day will help on the demand equation. We put out publications such as the World Silver Survey. We do a bi-monthly silver news, which is also translated into Chinese and Spanish. We've been putting out market trend reports over the last 2 years. We've done one on solar. We've done one on automobiles. We did just put one out in June on brazing and soldering. Shortly, we're going to put one out on jewelry trends for the consumer. Who's buying silver? Where are they buying silver jewelry and so forth? And later this year, we'll be putting out a report on a market trend report on India, really diving into their investment market. We're going to put out two more reports this year as well, in addition to the market trend reports. One on making the case for silver's inclusion in a multi-asset portfolio. And then we'll be doing another one on silver's low carbon footprint as well. So we're quite active. We like to get as much information to the market as possible. And our membership continues to grow. So we're quite pleased. And of course, we couldn't do it without the help of our member companies. And to them, we are eternally grateful.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that India outlook on silver, and I will definitely read a page 25 on
Oh,
that one for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely. Can't miss page 25.
Michael DiRienzo, is there a way people can follow you or follow the Silver Institute to get more info?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you go to the Silver Institute's website at silverinstitute.org, you can sign up for all of our publications. It says sign up for Silver News, but you'll get our press releases as well. You can follow us on Twitter at Silver Institute. We also have a dedicated page on LinkedIn. So, and of course, people are more than happy to email me directly at mdirenzo@silverinstitute.org.
All right, appreciate that. Michael DiRienzo from the Silver Institute. I hope we can do this again soon, and I look forward to having another chat with you.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I really appreciate the opportunity.
That was Michael DiRienzo from the Silver Institute sharing his views and knowledge and insights on silver. To get more insights on silver, please visit thesilverinstitute.org. If you like this video, please consider subscribing, giving us a thumbs up, and sharing it with your friends. Audio-only versions of this interview can be found on iTunes